my name is Christina and I'm a homesteading, homeschooling mom of 3, and welcome to the channel. I promised a curriculum review for My Father's World, Creation to the Greeks, and this year I did this with a 4th grader and we used the 2nd edition. We have previously done Adventures in U.S. History and My Father's World Exploring Countries and Cultures, and we liked it, and I plan on doing My Father's World, what would be the next one? Rome to Reformation next. So I'm just going to go ahead and go piece by piece the materials that are in the package. Alright, the first thing is Journey Through the Bible. This was a wonderful resource coming from somebody who is still learning a lot about the Christian faith and, just developing my faith, learning the history, what was going on in people's lives in the Bible. So somebody who is not already well versed in this was a fantastic resource, and it really helped me to grow. It helped my son to grow. There's a lot of maps, there are artifacts from time periods mentioned. It is a resource that would be used almost every day, not necessarily every day, but nearly every day as you read something from the Bible, because you will go from, this will cover all the Old Testament times. So as you go through the Bible, you will be reading a page or two throughout the book. It's not overwhelming. And I do believe that we will continue to use this next year as we move on to Rome for Reformation. Another material that was listed that I forgot to grab, I'll see if I can get it in a little bit, is Celebrating Biblical Feasts. So in Creation to the Greeks, we do biblical feasts as they would fall on the Jewish calendar, and you're provided with the Jewish calendar, and then you just kind of have to Google like this year where you would do particular celebrations. And we did do several of the feasts. We didn't do all the feasts, but they were absolutely memorable. I'll see if I can throw some photos up for you. We did the challah, the braided bread. We did all kinds of things with candles and serving traditional foods and prayers, and it was just a very wonderful, enriching addition to the curriculum. It's something that definitely sets something like My Father's World apart from something, just secular, and something that would be, just a lot of book work. There's a lot of things in My Father's World that is reading, but then there's a lot of like family type activities too. And sometimes people just pick and choose what kinds of activities they want to do with that. And for myself, I love to involve my family as much as possible. And it was an opportunity for my son, who was in 4th grade, to, show what he knows, be able to share what he's been learning in school with the rest of the family, which was enriching to the other children at the table and to my husband and myself as well. The next material listed here is Streams of Civilization, Volume 1. My son is a strong reader. He comprehends well. This textbook can be slightly intimidating. It is definitely it's a textbook. It's not, it's not like a living book, I suppose. It was nice. You did jump around back and forth a lot in the book, but in the teacher's guide, it tells you, exactly where to go. We never were confused about what it was we were supposed to be doing or anything like that. It always tells you exactly where you're going to be. So for example, it says here, Streams of Civilization, page 91 to 93, the Hebrews. For young children, edit description of sins in Canaan. Stop before Israel under Solomon. So it's very specific for the parent-teacher, so that they know exactly what they need to be doing in this book. The selections that are read are never very long, but I will say this isn't something that we were like, woo, it's Streams of Civilization Day. But it gave us the information we needed and move on. Not everything that you do every day in homeschool is going to be life-changing, mind-blowing, super memorable, but it's just as you add it up over time, it helps to develop you and helps you understand your world. Another material that we used is called the Usborne Internet-Linked Ancient World. I don't know if you're familiar with Usborne books, but if you're not, they are often wonderful in that it has short bits of text as well as inserts like maps and lots of diagrams. Like, it'll have an illustration with many different captions on there, so you can really understand what's happening in the picture. So the picture is very informational. Learn a lot from those. This is a material that you would use Most of the year we used it, and maybe once or twice a week. Oh, sorry about that beep. I am canning green beans. I've got to go check on something. And I'm back. The green beans are coming along nice. I will be canning green beans till I go to sleep tonight, I think. All right, Ancient Egypt. This book was used earlier on in the school year, so if you are buying like each little piece because maybe you don't have all the money to dish out for the curriculum just yet, this is something that you will be using early on. I would say about October, November, I think is whenever we used it. And this book is very child-centered, craft-centered, lots of activities to be done. It's one of those things that made for a memorable experience with the content, and just they were fun things to do together with my child. If you are a very busy person, maybe you have many children to tend to, maybe you're working part-time or full-time, and just the time that you have to dedicate to homeschooling is limited, this might be a nice activity to try to see if maybe like an aunt or an uncle could help with, or an older sibling. But if you have a very independent child who enjoys crafts, they may be able to do it on their own. But honestly, I feel like my son is rather independent, and he does enjoy creating things, and still sometimes he needed some guidance on how to get things done. Again, I do like it a lot, and I definitely recommend it, but if it's something that it's just something you might not have time for, or that your child may get frustrated with if they're not really crafty. But good book, and I like it. Okay, another one that was within our curriculum is The Trojan Horse, and it is a step into reading book. It was one that my son kind of wanted us to just keep reading instead of stopping and starting like you do as the curriculum has recommended. But it's nice to get just small snippets of information, process that, and then come back to it the next day. It's a rather short book, rather simple text, because it is one of these step into reading books. It says it's a step 5 ready for chapters. It is a little bit redundant in that, we had already been reading about some of this information in these larger texts, but it just helped to reinforce it, and it puts it on a child's level. It's something that my son could have read independently. I just like to read with him, so we snuggled up and did that. All right, another one, The Children's Homer. I have seen some debate online whether or not this would be appropriate for children. However, it is such a classic story. It's one that's not to be missed, and it definitely is relevant for the time period that we are studying. And I mean, in 4th grade, which is the grade that we're in, we read it together, and we had opportunities to discuss anything. There's absolutely violence in this story, but it's nice to be able to do that together. Now, I will say, when I say to be able to do that together, I mean to be able to have discussions about things that might be sensitive, that if you have a more sensitive child that you've not exposed maybe to a lot of things like this, it's nice to have that guidance from an adult as you read together, opportunities to discuss and ask questions, and you can kind of assess how they're feeling as you're reading with them. There are a lot of memes in this book that, Google was my friend. I was able to look up and figure out how to pronounce things. I would definitely recommend pre-reading unless you are really into Greek literature. I would recommend pre-reading this so that you are able to pronounce everything correctly, because I know that I was not able to. The illustrations in this text are limited. It is primarily text. The illustrations are simple. They're line drawings, and it was a nice accompaniment. It wasn't the focal point. I would recommend it. I'm glad we did that together. Aesop's Fables for Children. This is a book that was used toward the end of the year. It is something I believe that you could have read all throughout the year, because if you do it just one story a day toward the end of the year as recommended, you really only get a few pages in. Let's see, we got to page 26, I think, and we didn't read the rest. But my daughter is in preschool, So we can go ahead and read this together. And I don't know about at your house, but at our house, if I begin reading something like this, sometimes the older children will come along and just kind of want to see what's happening, hear the story too. So I think that they will get it also. And a nice thing about this particular book is that it does come with a CD. So another wonderful option, I think, would be to, at the end of your school year, say if you're in my position, at the end of the school year, if you want to stick this CD in the CD player in the car and stick this in the back pocket, this could be something that they could flip through in the car and hear these stories. And I mean, it's when you're stuck in a car, it's a wonderful opportunity for discussion of books as well. One thing that's not on the list, if you were to look at the teacher's manual at the Creation to Greeks Basic Package that was referenced, that you may want to have, is Window on the World. Now this edition is an older edition. It is what we used for exploring countries and cultures. If you're not familiar with Window on the World, it will take a portion of the world, maybe a particular culture or a particular country. There's even a part in the back, I believe, that has specific religions. So this, for example, is Haiti. It has your map here. It gives a little bit of information about Haiti, maybe some things they struggle with, demographics. This one has Haitian proverbs. This guide over here is lovely. It says to help you pray for Haiti. And then down here, it usually gives a story or two about a person of that culture or from that country who is exposed to just different evils of the world and perhaps how they may have turned to the Christianity. So this is a wonderful book. We did not use it this year. It was recommended on occasion to go back and read, maybe to pray for Greece or something like that. A lot of, we would do the prayer. I might share some information that I know about the country, but I didn't go to the effort of getting out the book and reading about it at that time. I do like to supplement our curriculum with other riches, which I can make a video on another time. But, this was something that I felt like we've already done it. It's a part of our conversations around our house some anyway, and I felt like it wasn't necessary. However, if you don't have this resource and that's not something that you're comfortable with, just speaking about a particular country and the culture there, this might be a lovely resource. I would recommend, however, like I said, this is an older edition. I would recommend trying to get the most current edition if it's in your budget, because, the political maps change. Regions have different needs over time, so that might be a consideration. Right. My Father's World, Creation to the Greeks, wants you to have a timeline, and we did that in U.S. history as well, Adventures in U.S. History. In the past, for Adventures in U.S. History, you see me keep looking up here, because we actually did our schooling in a loft area, which was really convenient for us at the time, but as our family's needs changed, we ended up just moving to the dining room. And I didn't really have the space for a timeline. You can see we have a lot of windows in here. So we ended up purchasing a timeline online, Book of Centuries, and I can put a link down below because this was a nice little resource. But it would have in there a place for you to put in the pictures that you would have on the timeline. And we actually went back and grabbed the timeline pieces from Adventures in U.S. History and put those on there. And as well as the things that we use this year for the curriculum. So for example, this one is Pyramids in Egypt, and we put it under the 25th century BC. It tells you here 2500 BC, and it has different columns for different time periods. So this is 2500 to 2476 BC, 2475 to 2451 BC, and so on. And then the rows are people, wars and events, discoveries, literature, music, and art. So as you would read or maybe study art or music, as you would do things throughout the curriculum, it has an opportunity for you to write things down that are memorable. We didn't do that as often as I'd like. I thought that was a wonderful idea, but it really just wasn't something that we didn't add anything extra. We just kind of did what was required. So, and I use that term loosely because here in the state that I'm in, it's not really required that we follow everything to a T. We just need to show growth over time, and we grow. We're good. All right, so for example, here we've got 15th century BC. It has the Exodus, manna, 10 Commandments, and Jericho as some of the pieces that are on the timeline. We like the timeline, and I like this because this is something I can stick on a shelf, and we can pull it out and flip through it, and maybe as we're reading, for example, we read Robinson Crusoe this year. It was not at all related to my father's world, but we read it and we loved it, and we could put maybe when the author wrote that book, and also we could have put in here when that would have taken place. So as we would maybe do something else on our timeline, we could compare, you know, what else was happening in the world around that time. I love it. All right, another thing are the science materials. Okay, the primary resource for science this year is Dr. J. Wiles' Science in the Beginning, and in this this book was written to the student. It is a textbook, but it's written very much like from a I am your teacher friend perspective. In the previous lesson, you learned that the motion of the sun across the sky every day is not the result of the sun moving around to the earth. Instead, it is the result of the earth rotating. When the part of the earth that you are on rotates so that it faces away from the sun, day turns to night. As it rotates so that it once faces the sun, night turns into day. So it talks to the student, uses kid-friendly language. There are lots of activities, lots and lots of activities in here. For the most part, the activities were pretty manageable. I personally love science. There are some activities, though, that we kind of skipped because we live on a farm and we have, you know, lots of plants. We have animals that we grow from little babies and do the whole butchering process and everything. So some of these lessons in here are kind of things that we've already talked about, and I wasn't going to spend our time on it. You know, and that's just the beauty of homeschooling. You can tailor it to your own student. This isn't really what my child needs. Let's use our time in another way. Well, for this book, there are a lot of really great activities. They are not difficult to do. Most of the experiments turned out very well, with the occasional flop, and that could have been my fault, or it could have been that better directions were needed, but overall it was wonderful. The ones with the electricity, I think, were super fun. It does come with this lovely book for the teacher that has answers at the end of each section that you would read. And for the science book, you would do science. It depends on the week, but some weeks are heavier than others. But you would typically do science probably 2 to 3 times a week. And at the end of each section you would read there are questions, and it has questions for younger students and questions for older students. And I would just have my son write his responses, and we would put that into a 3-ring binder. So day 1 was light, and he drew a picture of drew a picture of a light switch. It says light reflecting is light bouncing off of stuff. So he has the sun, he drew an arrow to the flower, and then to the person's eyes, and he gave his person a little expression of like, oh, like he was amazed or something, I'm not sure. But anyway, as far as the book work goes for science, for us, it was fairly minimal, and he didn't always want to write things down, but isn't that kids? Do they always, you know, I feel like most kids are just kind of reluctant to write, and in this case, oh, look, he's turned his stuff into Mario things. He's got a, whatever, what is that thing in the cloud? A coop? I don't know. Koopa? I don't know. Anyway, it says a cloud is made of water. And then it has here, there's the cloud, and it says condensation with an arrow for liquid, and water vapor and evaporation down here. So it has you drawing diagrams and things like that that help you to understand different scientific principles. And I began to talk about this book, but I don't know that I finished it, but this gives you basically your answer key. And there are some tests in there if you like to do tests, or if testing is required for your state. All right, lots of materials, lots of good stuff though. All right, also in science is this book, Pyramids, and in it there are a lot of hands-on materials that you can do. For example, this one was moving loads, and it talked about how the Egyptians would move large stones, the slaves would move large stones for their pyramids. It has in here, let's see, this says using seals and paints. So we took a potato and we drew things and, you know, etched things into the potato and then used that as a stamp or a seal. It has here making your own paintbrushes. How might they have made paintbrushes in that era? So lots of hands-on activities that just help to bring the the science to life and the history to life. I love it. Love all that. There is another book about dinosaurs, and I'm going to grab it, not to be missed. All right. So, Dinosaurs of Eden. Did Adam and Noah live with dinosaurs? Ken Ham. He is largely involved with Answers in Genesis, and this book talks about, you know, what we actually know about dinosaurs based on maybe what the Bible says, or just the evidence, the physical evidence that we have, and what might be just assumptions that people have made. And I think that this has been a wonderful resource and really helps to like open up a conversation about truth versus things that maybe are not scientifically based, even though people would say so, or historically based. Another material would be our music. Forgive my busted up CD, but you know, life, kids, is the story of Bach. We studied Bach, Vivaldi, and Handel. And for each of the musicians and composers that we studied, it came with like a life history story about them, and then it also had just their music on another CD. So you would get 2 CDs for each person. And this was a material that for us really wasn't necessary because we have access to the internet. We use YouTube, and sometimes I would skip the CDs and I would just pull up you know, just whatever it is that we're learning, like Handel. I would just put some music on while we did our handwriting or something like that, so that he's hearing it, and I would point out, oh, this is that, and it'll, you know, tell him the title or the composer. But that's just how we did it half the time. Sometimes there are activities. For example, for Vivaldi, he is one of his famous songs, I suppose. Oh, there goes my canner again. Just a second. Had to pull the canner off the stove and get the beans cooling. All right, so for seasons. Now this is my son's work. He wasn't super excited to do it that day, but he was to draw or paint a fall scene while listening to Autumn, Vivaldi's Autumn, and that is what he did. He enjoyed doing it, and I painted with him, and my daughter painted also, and we just kind of had some fun with it, and we used some fall colors. Also in art, well, that was really music, but that was an art activity that we did with it, but we'll go ahead and segue over to art. So, Forgotten History of Art. This book is primarily a book that you would write in as you go. So, you know, here it had triangles and squares and rectangles, and you would copy things or you might add things. This lesson was focusing on shading here, and then up here it talked about stippling and cross hatching and that type of thing. It was a fun activity. He did a good job on it. He learned some things, learned some new techniques. He does like to draw, and he does a good job when it's something that he wants to do, but you know, not every lesson you get too excited about, right? Anyway, in this book, this is it's got in the history of art, right? So it is art, and there are Christian elements, absolutely. So this particular one, it said, you know, that you needed to go ahead and put something on the arches here that tells a Bible story, and then you would have your different Bible stories here. And so this is John the Baptist baptizing Jesus is what he chose to depict here. So it's a nice way to do art. I will say that as far as this particular book goes, we didn't, if you look at what's required for this curriculum, it'll tell you that you need to have acrylic paint and paints and things like that. What we did is I just have a little shoebox, and I have in here some pans that are somewhat neglected. You know, this is the I'm gonna come back to it saran wrap on top that never happened because this was like a while ago. And then some paintbrushes. And as far as the green band goes, I wanted to be able to set this apart and aside for my son for school, so I know he would have what he would like for school, because we love to do arts and crafts at my house, and I was afraid that his materials for school might sneak off to other places. And for me, I didn't want to be in the middle of my school day expecting that he had what he needed and he didn't, and then we had to spend forever gathering up materials. So that wasn't something that I was wanting to do, so I put this green band on his things for school so we would remember that it goes in this box. So this was a lesson that he did with mixing paints. Now what I was going to say about the paints is primarily at the beginning of the year, really up until almost the end of the school year, end of the curriculum here, you really don't need paint at all. So if it's not in the budget right now, don't worry about it, because you don't need it, and you might be able to just buy your time a little bit, save up some money, or see if you are able to accumulate the resources in another way from a friend, you know, at a thrift store, whatever. Take your time on that one. In this example, I'll show you, he had a paint card that he was to look at, and it told him how to mix the colors, and so that he could try to paint this stag beetle as he saw it on the art. So let me grab that art card. The materials don't fit very well inside a folder, so I did a big manila folder that sits on our bookshelf with these materials. And here I have our cards. I don't see the stag beetle right off the bat, but you can just trust me when I tell you it's, yeah, I don't see it right off the bat. But some of the cards, some of the artwork would be, like this says, Peter Paul Rubens, the entombment oil on canvas. It tells you that it is a Flemish work of art made about 1577 to 1640. So it will give you just a postcard size of it, and then it has information on the back. And I look forward to using these more. We did not use them very much this year, but I know this is a material that we'll use more next year, and that delights me because I love classical things. So I'm excited. Here's one he did. There were a couple different strategies that were used to paint pots. So they had kind of they mimicked that with this activity, though it wasn't really exactly what was done before, but it's cool. It was a nice, we had a nice time in art for the most part. Some of the activities were a little bit redundant, but enjoyable. All right, my favorite part. I just love books. I love good books, and I love reading with my kids. All right, today we read, or not today, excuse me, this year, we read 3 books by Patricia, I would say Patricia St. John, but according to Elizabeth Elliot, whom I trust in many ways, says that it's pronounced St. John. So Patricia St. John, and she says, that's the English for you. 3 books that we read were The Tanglewood Secret, Star of Light, and Treasures of the Snow. And if you're familiar with Moody Press, these are all Christian stories. These are fiction. There's my makeshift bookmark. These are fiction, and they are just beautiful stories about people who have just dealt with some hard things in their life, maybe being accused of murder, or maybe, let's see, let's just look at it. All right, so this one, Treasures of the Snow. It says, a beautifully written and engaging story that captures the innocence of childhood and the joys found in the little things. Learn as well what the healing power of repentance and forgiveness can bring as we heed our Savior's voice in our lives. Since their publication over 50 years ago, Patricia St. John's classics, Treasures of the Snow and The Tanglewood Secret, have been adapted in this recent edition for a new generation of children. The other one was Star of Light. Hamid does not want his little blind sister, Kinza, to be sold to a beggar by their stepfather, so he decides to rescue her. Together they escape from their mountain village to a town where there may be a home for Kinza. But this isn't only the start of their adventures. Will Kinza be safe? What will happen to Hamid, who dares not to go back home? Tanglewood Secret. In a struggle to learn to overcome her fiery temper and selfish spirit, Ruth is led to the discovery of a very important shepherd who can and does teach her and others how to be good. The story contains beautiful and uplifting examples of what can happen when we let ourselves be found by him. So, beautiful, wonderful stories. I liked them so much that I read them to my daughter, who is not homeschooled this year, And, you know, those were her bedtime stories because they were just so wonderful and I did not want her to miss them. Beautiful stuff. We did English from the roots up for reading, writing, spelling, and SAT scores, it says. And this year, the focus was on Greek roots. And what we would do is every day there would be a small activity. I mean, this was very short, quick work. You would look up the definition of the word one day. The next day, you would go ahead and define it. The day after that, you would write a sentence or two using the words. And then after that, you would have a test, you know, which was just us flipping through and trying to remember. So my son's card says thermos, heat, thermos, bottle insulated. Insulated bottle which keeps liquid cold or hot. I put hot cocoa in a thermos. Thermotropic, turning towards heat. Plants are thermotropic. So this was fun because we were able to use some of these words. I mean, gosh, okay, it wasn't just in science because these are Greek roots. You will see them everywhere. As you learn these with your kids, you will see them everywhere. So when we did dinosaurs, Dinos was one. Phone is here, sin, kinesis, dia, logos, all kinds of roots. Very helpful. And it's going to help your kids to decode words later on and have a better understanding of what words mean as they come across some unknown things. It's helped me anyway. So anyway, we loved our year. Definitely recommend it. Plan on doing My Father's World again. I did kind of consider switching to Ambleside only because in my head I think Ambleside would be wonderful because I simply love to sit and read with my kids. However, you know, my son's at a point where he's going to be more independent and I know I'll need to let go. And I just don't think we need to switch because My Father's World has been working so well for us. I kind of feel like, you know, maybe in another lifetime or with another child, I'd like to try Ambleside, but I really enjoy this curriculum. We've had such fun the past few years. So we're going to stick with My Father's World. And I do add some riches in from Ambleside, which I will try to make another video about. I know I've been kind of lame on the videos lately. We've been like crazy busy with different life stuff. So I'm sorry if you've been waiting to hear from me and I've neglected you. I apologize. Anyhow, we're going to do it again. So stay tuned and we'll talk about it.